Hello, I'm Jennifer Witt, Director of ProjectManager.com. Well, welcome to our whiteboard session today on the top 10 reasons why projects fail. I'm sure you probably experienced some of these on your own. But in one company I worked in, I was responsible for going in recovering troubled projects. So I began to study the projects. What made the ones succeed, and what made the ones fail. So I've looked at a cross-section of these, and over time I've seen a repeat causes of projects failing. There are all kinds of research done out there. You can Google it and get probably over 1 million hits on why projects fail. Gardner Group and some other organizations track this all the time, but these are from my experience, and see if some of these are common. Number one, unaligned expectations. Unaligned expectations can still be unaligned even though expectations have been set, they've been agreed upon, but I'm sure you've seen it yourself where people leave the meetings and they go to their respective organizations and they talk about how they're unaligned, they don't agree. So even though they've agreed on paper, organizations, groups, or teams still don't have the same expectations, so they're unaligned. So what happens is unconsciously people still start doing what they really want to do, and that comes into conflict. Number two, implementing before the project is actually approved or baseline. So you've seen it where in every organization or company where companies are trying to get projects executed and implemented. Maybe they're trying to get first to market on a product, a new product, or maybe there's a need in the organization or outside the organization, and then the team members maybe have experience in that organization, so they know kind of what's supposed to be done. So everybody starts running down the road before all the approvals, before the budgets, before everything's been approved. And what happens is people start doing things that maybe end up not being on the approved or baseline plan. Maybe budgets that people thought were going to get approved don't get approved, so resources don't get approved. So what happens is things already get worked on that are out of scope, outside the budget. So that causes problems down the road. Number three, inexperienced or untrained resources. So we all are fighting for resources, and today many organizations are trying to do more with less. So it's not uncommon to have resources on your team that are inexperienced or untrained. That's something we have to deal with. But the idea is that when we do set that situation up without estimating things appropriately and taking into into account, we get into trouble because maybe a certain resource or a certain person provided a certain task or produced a certain deliverable in the past. So maybe you have estimates from a previous project. Well, if you put a new resource in place, maybe one that doesn't have the same experience, skill sets as the other one, and you're going off the old estimates, if you don't re-estimate based on the experience or the skill sets of that resource, then they're probably not going to be able to accomplish it in the same time. So it sets that person up for failure, and it sets the project up for failure too. Inadequate systems, meaning maybe this is a project where the resources are global or they're remote, your team members are remote, and maybe you need some access for people to be able to collaborate and update things. So without having the adequate systems where people can access things online, update them in real time, if they're inadequate, things aren't going to be updated and people informed appropriately. So number five, inaccessible systems. Again, that gets back to maybe software, spreadsheets, tools, templates are not online, or critical resources on your projects can't get those updated. Maybe they can't even see them and view them or even know what tasks they're responsible for, what deliverables they're to be producing by what timeline. They don't know the milestones. So when these two aren't available, then again, that sets you up for failure or the team up for failure. Number six, team conflict. So for sure, when projects start failing or things start going wrong, emotions start going high, and teams start getting into conflict, everyone is at their worst at that time. So, but it's common for teams to begin getting in conflict. that can actually be the cause of some projects derailing. When teams get in conflict, if you think of sports teams or maybe bands, or I don't know if you're artistic or musically inclined, but typically where you have people together on the same team, then generally they're working together. So if your team is in conflict and fighting against each other, then that can lead to the actual project failing and amplify it if it's not the cause. Number 7, the us versus them mentality. You've seen it, where maybe different organizations, maybe sales and marketing don't get along, or the marketing team doesn't like the IT team because sales sells something and they say IT can't get it done for their customer. So it doesn't matter what scenario, you've seen it all in your own organization, but the us versus them leads to projects failing because people stake their territory and they fight for their right, they take their stand, and so it just leads to more problems. Number 8, misaligned resources. That's where maybe you've had to put someone in a role, maybe again they're not trained, maybe they're not experienced, and they can't even do it. They don't want to do it, but if they're misaligned, if you don't set your resources, your people up for success, then typically people don't do what they don't want to do. We do what we love doing. We do what we know how to do. But when we start putting people in misaligned roles, then things don't get done on time, and that can lead to a big source of failure. Number 9, switching priorities. So especially nowadays with things, companies are changing priorities on a regular basis. So if the priorities change within your organization and people, it's not communicated to your team or your organization, and the project plans gone back and rebaselined, and people are still working off of those, maybe some of the priorities change and some of your critical resources or critical people on the team get taken away. Maybe some of the scope gets cut or the budget gets cut from your project and shifted to another. That leads to project failures if you don't go back and baseline your project plan. If you do go back and use good project management techniques, then it won't be considered a failed project. Number 10, uncontrolled scope. That's where things get changed, due to changing priorities or things changing where the scope gets out of control. Maybe people are committing to things outside the change control board. That's why it's critical to have a change control board to bring those scope requests in. Things as you run into during the project, give it to the change control board and let them handle those decisions. But if those decisions aren't brought to the change control board, so your stakeholders can analyze it and make decisions based on what the company needs are, then it just leads to project failure. So these are some of the things that we feel like are the top 10 reasons. Our team at projectmanager.com has been hard at work in trying to incorporate these ideas, these principles, new ways to socialize and mobilize teams quickly, and putting things into the software. If you're trying to plan accordingly and avoid these top 10 reasons for your project to potentially fail, then sign up for our software at projectmanager.com.